Have you ever sent a message that took you 10 minutes to write, only to receive a reply that took the other person 2 seconds? You read it once, then again, and again. Just 2 words. Okay. Or maybe even worse. Sure. And suddenly, your mind begins to move. Not calmly, not gently, but like a storm that has been waiting for an excuse. Why was that so short? Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Did I come across the wrong way? You replay the message you sent, word by word, sentence by sentence. Maybe you even open it again and rewrite it in your head. I shouldn't have said that part. Maybe that sounded passive-aggressive. Maybe they think I'm annoying. Or maybe it wasn't a text message. Maybe it was something smaller. You walk past a coworker in the hallway. Normally they smile. Normally they say hello. But today, nothing. They just walk by, eyes forward, no acknowledgement. And once again, your mind begins constructing its quiet little courtroom. Did I offend them yesterday? Did someone say something about me? Do they secretly dislike me? Overthinkers know this feeling very well. That strange, exhausting habit of turning small moments into heavy emotional puzzles. Moments that most people forget in seconds, but we carry for hours, sometimes days. We replay conversations long after they end. We analyze tone, facial expressions, pauses, punctuation marks. A single word can sit in our mind like a stone in a shoe. Small, but impossible to ignore. And what makes it even more exhausting is that we feel responsible for fixing it. We feel responsible for figuring it out, for decoding what someone really meant. It is a heavy way to live, carrying the emotional weight of other people's moods, trying to interpret every silence, every short reply, every distant look. And the strange thing is, most of the time, we never actually find the answer. But centuries ago, Zen teachers told a very simple story, a story so small that you might almost miss its power. Yet hidden inside it is a quiet lesson that can free an overthinking mind. It is called The Story of the Empty Boat. Long ago, there was a monk who had dedicated his life to finding peace. Not temporary peace, not the kind that comes and goes with good days and bad days, but a deep, unshakable calm, the kind that cannot be disturbed. To practice this, he often went to a quiet lake, a lake surrounded by misty mountains. The water there was so still that the surface looked like polished glass. In that lake, he kept a small wooden boat. Nothing fancy, just a simple boat, just big enough for one person to sit in. Early in the morning, when the world was silent, he would row the boat to the center of the lake. Then he would close his eyes and meditate. The air was cool. The water barely moved. Sometimes a light fog drifted over the lake, wrapping everything in soft gray silence. It was the perfect place to find peace. One morning, the monk pushed his boat out onto the lake just like he always did. He rowed slowly to the center, placed the oars down, sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and began his meditation. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The lake was quiet. The fog had grown thick now, blanketing the water so completely that the monk could see nothing beyond a few feet. But that was fine. In fact, it was better. Less distraction, more stillness. Then suddenly, thud. Another boat slammed directly into his, hard enough to rock it, hard enough to break his concentration instantly. The monk's eyes snapped open, his peaceful meditation shattered. His body tightened, his breath grew sharp. Inside his chest, something began to rise. A hot, familiar feeling. Anger. Someone had clearly rode straight into him, through the fog, without paying attention, without care. The monk could feel the words forming in his throat. He was ready to shout, ready to scold the careless person who had ruined his meditation. His hands clenched slightly, his heart beat faster, his mind filled with accusations. How irresponsible, how careless, some fool who cannot even steer a boat properly. He took a breath, preparing to yell across the water, preparing to release his frustration. And then, just as he opened his mouth, the fog began to thin. Let's pause here for a moment, before the fog clears, before we see what the monk sees, because something very important just happened, something that happens inside our minds almost every day. The monk didn't get angry because of the boat. The boat only bumped into him. That's all. What made him angry was the story he created about the person in the boat. He imagined careless, someone disrespectful, someone foolish enough to interrupt his peace. And the moment that story appeared, anger followed, almost instantly. Our minds do this constantly, especially if we are prone to overthinking. When someone replies with a short message, our mind fills in the missing details. They're annoyed with me. When someone doesn't greet us, our mind writes another story. They must dislike me. When someone cancels plans, another explanation appears. I must not matter to them. But here is the quiet truth that most of us forget. Most people are not thinking about us nearly as much as we imagine. They are busy navigating their own storms, their own worries, their own sleepless nights. Maybe the coworker who ignored you had just received bad news. Maybe the friend who sent a short message was overwhelmed at work. Maybe the stranger who looked irritated was simply exhausted. Not everything that touches our life was aimed at us. But the mind hates uncertainty. It wants answers. It wants explanations. And when it doesn't have them, it invents them. Sometimes those invented stories can hurt us far more than reality ever would be. Now, let's return to the monk and see what the fog reveals. The monk sat in his rocking boat, still breathing heavily, still ready to shout. The fog slowly began to thin. Little by little, the gray veil lifted from the lake, and the other boat came into view. The monk leaned forward slightly, trying to see the person responsible, trying to see the face of the careless boatman. But then he noticed something strange. No one was there. The boat was completely empty. No oarsman, no fisherman, no careless stranger. Just a small wooden boat, drifting slowly across the water, moved only by the gentle current. It had simply slipped loose from its mooring somewhere along the shore and drifted through the fog until it bumped into him. The monk blinked. His anger disappeared instantly, not slowly, not gradually, instantly, because suddenly there was no one to blame. The boat hadn't meant to disturb him. It had no intention, no motive, no carelessness. It was just drifting. And the monk realized something profound. He had not been angry at the boat. He had been angry at the story he invented about the boatman. The moment that imaginary boatman disappeared, so did the anger. And that realization stayed with him for the rest of his life. Because after that day, whenever someone insulted him, or spoke harshly, or behaved rudely, he would simply remind himself, that boat is empty. Not because the person literally wasn't there, but because their actions were being carried by currents he could not see, currents of stress, pain, fear, fatigue. They were drifting through their own fog, just like the boat. So if you are someone who overthinks, you have probably been colliding with empty boats your entire life. The short messages, the awkward silences, the intentional pauses, moments that felt deeply personal, moments that kept you awake at night wondering what you did wrong. But what if many of those boats were empty? What if the person who seemed distant was just tired? What if the person who sounded cold was just overwhelmed? What if the person who didn't respond was fighting a battle you could not see? You see, overthinkers carry an invisible burden. We assume responsibility for emotional ripples that were never ours. We try to solve mysteries that were never meant to be solved. We replay conversations that the other person forgot 5 minutes later. And slowly, quietly, that habit steals our peace. But the story of the empty boat offers a different way to live, a gentler interpretation of the world. Instead of asking, "Why did they do that to me?" you begin asking, maybe their boat was just drifting. Not everything requires analysis. Not every silence hides a secret. Not every short reply carries a hidden meaning. Sometimes it is just an empty boat. And when you truly understand this, something very beautiful happens. You stop absorbing every small impact. You stop carrying every bump and ripple with you. The boats may still touch your life. People will still have bad days. They will still be distracted, impatient, human. But now you simply let the boat gently bump against yours and drift away. No anger, no heavy story, no sleepless analysis, just water returning to stillness. So the next time someone sends a short message or walks past you without a smile or says something that feels a little sharp, take a breath, picture the fog, picture the lake, picture the drifting boat, and quietly remind yourself, maybe that boat was empty. And when you stop chasing every drifting boat, you finally discover something precious. Your peace was never meant to depend on them. It was always meant to stay with you, quiet, still, and undisturbed, like a calm lake in the early morning fog. This brings to the end of this story. Thanks for watching till here. Comment below with your quiet lesson moment. Like and share the video to help spread the wisdom, and subscribe to the channel for more such thoughtful stories.